Okay, thank you. And I'm pleased to introduce our first presenter, Molly Blasing. She's an associate professor of Russian studies at University of Kentucky, where she teaches courses in Russian language, literature, culture, and film. A scholar of 20th century literary culture, she's the author of Snapshot of the Soul, Photopoetic Encounters in Modern Russian Culture. And she also oversees the American Archive on Marina and Anastasia Tsvetaeva at University of Kentucky. She is a member of MLA Task Force on World Languages and Generative AI and is completing a set of open access modules for learners of Russian on topics in climate, energy, and sustainability. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you so much, Veronika. And it's great to see everybody, some familiar faces and some new faces as well. So what I'd like to do in my time today is tell you a little bit about some work that I've done on teaching environmental sustainability, topics in climate, energy, and sustainability at the University of Kentucky. This will be the basis of these open access resources that Veronika mentioned. I just got a grant from our libraries to work on that this summer to take materials that I've published with Masha's volume and put them in a format that all of you will be able to access and use with your students. And hopefully those can expand over time. So I want to tell you a bit about what those are. But then the second half of my short time today will be focused on introducing you to an organization called ASHE, which is the American Association of Sustainability in Higher Education, and some of the resources that they offer to faculty across campuses to collaborate with other educators on your campus on sustainability across the curriculum. So those are the focus of what I'll do today. And this will be just a brief overview of some of the things that I am doing in this sustainability curriculum. So many on the call are familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And as I've been working over the years on thinking about how to integrate topics in STEM into the Russian language classroom, I've really kind of come to the point of encouraging folks to start with sustainability. There's so much integration, as you can see in these sustainable development goals. Thinking about sustainability means thinking about education. It means thinking about poverty reduction. It means thinking about innovations in the design of our cities. And these topics lend themselves so well to the kinds of work that we do at all levels of the Russian language curriculum. I'm talking about what you have in your city, that unit of second year Russian, что у вас есть в городе, right? You can adapt that to slightly shift the focus, and that's what my lessons are doing. They're taking curriculum topics, grammar, vocabulary that we already do in our intermediate level courses or beginning Russian courses, and make a slight pivot so that instead of a generic, what do you have in your city, we're talking about things like what is a sustainable city? What makes a city more or less sustainable? What are the indices, right? You can look at data on more and less sustainable cities around the world or within the Russophone world. So you can bring infographics and data analysis, but do it, at a level that's appropriate for students. So it moves from talking about what you have in your city to comparing your city and other cities around the world in terms of sustainability principles. So some of my collaborators at UK we got a grant to create lessons in German. That was Dr. Brenna Bird, my colleague Koji Tano from Japan Studies, and I, plus some student assistants, worked to create a set of modules in our 3 different language areas that were designed around climate and sustainability. And we focused in particular on bringing authentic texts and materials around this idea of sustainable cities. And so Brenna, has students working on the environment, both campus and in the German-speaking world, and has students really going out into the natural world, developing the capabilities to speak in German about what they see in their surroundings, and doing reading lessons that are building around describing your environment. Koji's lessons on sustainable cities focus on transportation in Japan and some of the cultural particularities of how people move through space in Japan. And he has this wonderful lesson on the mamachari, this particular bicycle designed for parents or mothers probably, but parents more broadly. So kind of making it possible to move, within your city with your children to do your shopping. It has all of these resources built in. So the Russian units that I've developed are sort of focuses on some of the topics that you see here. So we introduce students to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And then we move to the 15-minute city concept. So we take the idea, we look at Paris and how Paris has changed over time from a highly polluted city to a much more clean and efficient city. We look at issues of public transportation in our own city, right? Thinking about where can you get to in Lexington, Kentucky within 15 minutes by on foot or by bicycle. So students, you're writing about that. We have a mini unit on the benefits and drawbacks of electric cars. And we look at EV data, public opinion polling in different places around the world. And the students write about and present on their own feelings about the benefits and drawbacks of that kind of technological innovation for transportation. We've got a really fun unit on recycling in Kazakhstan. There's a group of young people in Almaty coming out of one of the technical institutes that have created an app and a whole system of recycling centers in their city. And we do some work to compare that with initiatives happening on our own campus. We're a campus that aspires to be a zero waste campus. So there's a lot of good recycling infrastructure, and we can translate the posters and the sort of thing. The final section looks at eco-friendly habits, right? Things that we can do, small changes in our daily lives to improve sustainability of our individual kind of. Okay, so some of you have seen this before. I like this unit on Kazakhstan because it shows our students a place that now at this particular point in geopolitics, they can go and they can study. And we learn, where is Almaty? And we can see that this is a place that has been affected by colonialism. We have, right, a dual language country. So that's some things we notice right off. We have these videos from these young people. I actually have a colleague here in engineering who worked at this institution and knows these people, and we were able to connect with them. And it's really exciting to talk to real people out in the world. Just a very great intermediate level video from Instagram where they're introducing what you can recycle in this particular place and what the hours of operation are and the address, right? Things that we can use as a model for the students' own video project showing what's special about recycling on our campus that you can't do in the city writ large in Lexington, but you can do on our campus. So they made some really fun videos about the recycling infrastructure on our campus that were inspired by this great exercise, like listening for details, building the vocabulary to talk about what is recyclable in different places. And there's, again, that, on social media, you all know this, right? Some really good, just Instagram, YouTube, right? It's full of this wonderful material for looking at recycling and sustainability and zero waste. So here's that, flyer from our campus and the basis of that video project where they get to take the work that they're doing, but apply it to their own context and do this cultural comparison. All right, I actually want to move from this slide to take you to Aishi. So as I think about how to take this material, right, one initiative, of course, as I've said, is to make these lessons open educational resources that we can share and build. But Aishi, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, is another resource that you should know about. I was able to do one of their faculty programs. So if you go on the website, go to for faculty. Are you able to see the website? Is this working? Fantastic,
Yes.
thank you. So they have a program, the STARS program, where your campus sustainability initiatives We have an office for sustainability. We are, working toward a certain number of stars within this. So it's really great to look at what other infrastructure exists on your campus, what other resources there are. We have a sustainability grant that faculty can apply for to do collaborative projects that involve students to think about educating for sustainability. So take a look, look around your college university website and see what's going on in sustainability, because there are really great opportunities, sometimes for funding and certainly for partnerships. So one thing that ASHE offers are these professional learning opportunities, the On the Stars program. Right now, they're featuring the Sustainability Education Forum. There are these webinars. One of the programs that I did was a 2-day training in what's called the Piedmont and Ponderosa Project. So this is a program developed at the University of Arizona and Emory University by some faculty members who wanted to bring faculty together for these 2-day workshops where you brainstorm about bringing sustainability, like sustainability across the curriculum. And so ASHE offers this 2-day training to teach you and give you all the materials for how to make a pitch for the funding, how to organize this, how to identify speakers on your campus, to do the instructional sort of content modules, right? So if you have a climate scientist and you have someone from the business school working on sustainability in business, you create this program that works for your campus over 2 days. And they're super, super generous, right? So for pretty low cost, you can be part of this training workshop from ASHE, and then they provide you all the resources and the frameworks and the pitches and the materials for the Piedmont Ponderosa style sustainability across the curriculum workshop. So I thought for a while, it would be great to bring all the language educators at UK together and think about sustainability across the language curriculum, because that's one of my sort of near-term 5-year goals for our campus, is that every language class has some touches in some way on sustainability, climate, and energy issues, so that all of the students that we work with, right, have access to this very important curriculum. But I was convinced through doing the training program for the workshops through ASHE that there's incredible benefits to bringing together folks across the campus, not just language people. So, I've got these two different ideas, but I think my real aspiration, having done the workshop now, is that there's so much synergy that happens when you bring together folks from all the different academic fields to think about how to integrate sustainability into the curriculum. So that is really the main thing that I wanted to share with you all today. If you're not aware of this organization, they have a great listserv, tons of opportunities to connect with other people who are doing this. They have examples of folks who have brought sustainability into the world language curriculum. That's very much one of the examples that they cite. But there's so much inspiration in seeing what other people are doing across the different curricular fields. So thank you so much for your attention. I'm really looking forward to the other presentations and to talking with you more in the Q&A.
Thank you so much. So we've decided that we're going to leave questions until the end, but if you're afraid to forget your question, you can type it in the chat and then we'll get to them after all presentations will go through. Thank you so much, Molly. We're so looking forward to your resource. It's coming out this summer.
I'm not sure when it will launch. So the plan is to spend a good amount of time building it. It depends on how quickly I can learn H5P and make those interactive modules. So it could be it will not be out this fall, but hopefully over the next year or so we'll get it in good shape. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Our next presenter is Maria Khotimsky from MIT. Maria is a senior lecturer in Russian at Global Languages Department, where she supervises the Russian language program. Her research interests include language pedagogy, using digital technology and content-based courses, STEM and language learning, translation studies, and translingual poetry. She co-edited Teaching Russian Through STEM, the Routledge volume that came up in 2024, and the resource that she's going to talk about today, Choose to Study Russian for Professional Needs. Thank you, Maria.
Unmute. Thank you very much, Veronika, for the generous introduction. And I am happy to share the resource where Veronika is one of the co-authors, actually. I will give you a quick background information and spend a substantial amount of time on the structure of resource, materials that are available, and conclude with some ideas on how to use it in your classes. So this resource has been funded by a StarTalk grant for developing materials to help students achieve advanced proficiency and to attract more students to learning Russian. We collaborated with Veronika, Svetlana Abramova, our colleague from the University of Washington, and we've spent about 2 years on working on this resource to create more authentic materials in STEM and professional development fields. We also were cognizant of the changing political and cultural situation, which impedes our communication sometimes with colleagues in Russia and impedes our travel. So we tried to seek interview contributors in the United States, and we also tried to attract Russian speakers from different backgrounds, as you will see in the interviews. We polled our students, and we also realized that many students are now majoring in STEM and public policy fields, and they seek to combine their study of Russian with their professional development. So you see the quote on the bottom of the screen from from one of our students who shares the advice he has received on learning Russian as part of going into government jobs. So with that in mind, we set out to develop a resource of primary materials, which would be comprised of interviews with professionals in various fields. Most of them are native speakers of Russian, but not all. We have several professionals for whom Russian is the second language, who are bilingual in Russian and Ukrainian, for example, or in Russian and English. Overall, we recorded 11 interviews, created transcripts and biographies, as well as some supplementary materials, which I will demonstrate, and the links to the resource and many of these materials are posted in the chat. So our target audience is first and foremost students and educators, and we try to create it accessible for educators at K through 12 and higher education fields. We also hope that administrators of Russian programs can use part of this resource, and perhaps even government agencies who are promoting Russian language proficiency. Our interviewees come from a variety of fields, not exclusively STEM. So these include aerospace and history of science, biology, physics, mathematics, international relations. We were lucky to interview Dr. Michael McFall, who had served as an ambassador to the Russian Federation, and he reflected on the use of Russian in international relations. In terms of STEM fields, we also spoke with a professor of environmental geography, a researcher of medicine and public health, a scholar of cybersecurity, and as you see, we also recorded interviews in journalism and in political science. Additionally, last but not least, we were lucky to record an interview with Ben Rifkin, who reflected on his career path in higher education and on achieving superior proficiency in Russian language. So his interview is a little bit different in that it doesn't explore a separate content area, but gives our students and educators an in-depth dive of what it means to devote your career to language learning and education. And it has many, many valuable insights on achieving language proficiency, but also in advocating the role of language and culture study in our changing educational landscape. In terms of each interview structure, we always begin with biographical questions, and then we prompt our interviewees to tell a story about a decision that brought them to their field and inspired them to pursue a certain science or research area. Each interview in the STEM adjacent fields offers an explanation of a concept or a problem, or perhaps a demonstration of a technique and resource. We asked each of our interviewees interviewees about the role of Russian language in their field. And we will be honest, some of them did acknowledge that the main language of professional interaction and science is indeed English. However, they do mention that knowing Russian opens doors to international collaboration and also enables you to read resources and academic journals or textbooks that have not been yet translated from the Russian. Each of the interviews also probes advanced level questions where we invited our interlocutors to reflect on problems in science, technology, and society. Each interview concludes with a lightning question round, which again will be accessible to beginner level learners, such as книги или кино, ваша любимая книга, ваш любимый фильм, and some questions pertinent to that person's field. We tried, where possible, to ask our interlocutors about their vision for the future, thus practicing narration in the future tense. Some interviewees responded to the word of the year question. Not everyone chose to work with this question, unfortunately. And then some interviews include this or that question, such as Sputnik или Moderna, на Луну или на Mars, kind of more playful but also concise question available, kind of accessible to beginner level learners. So to give you more in-depth examples, here's an interview on research in biology by Andrei Shubin. The interviews on the resource are embedded from YouTube, but if you use the YouTube link, you will find the navigation, so very concise navigation between questions. So Professor Shubin demonstrated the mechanism of vaccine development and how mRNA vaccines work. He created this diagram for us and narrated a mechanism of vaccine functioning. Professor Boldyeva, who spoke about cryptography and cybersecurity, reflected in depth on the development of cybersecurity as a science, talked about career trajectories in cybersecurity. Professor Kuklina in environmental geography demonstrated several geospatial and map-making tools and talked about the concept of mapathons and social geography, where students or members of the public can participate in collecting geographical data for various social causes. Marina Ivanchenko, who specializes in medical research, talked about various new technology in genetic research, and she also talked about research in Usher syndrome, a very powerful and unique disease that affects vision and hearing, and that her lab is working on developing breakthrough cures for. So to give you more examples on the structure of the interview, here's a quick walkthrough through the longer versions of the questions. When we compose the questions, we try to model several aspects of scientific and professional discourse. A disclaimer: the questions appear as text on the slide, not as audio, and then the responders talk at length on these questions. So here are some more examples of questions. Each resource, so when you log in on the website and go to the specific interview page, you will see a biography, which is provided in English and in Russian, so you can use it for reading practice at beginner levels. Following the embedded video of the interview, you may find the interview transcript in PDF, which you can download and use for reading practice with your students, or which they can use for listening comprehension activities. And finally, each module includes pre-listening tasks with just some basic terminology from scientific fields, helping students grasp some key concepts, and post-listening activities that reflect on the content on the interview and more theoretical concepts from each interview. In terms of pedagogical ideas, just some thoughts. At the novice level in our classrooms, we sometimes turn on small sound bites where our interlocutors say where they're from, what they studied, which department they graduated from, or we read simple expressions from the quizzes. For intermediate level, you can listen to longer questions and look at topics you study. For example, in an interview on math, Professor Chertok reflects on the questions of women in academia and what it means for a woman to become a professor and a department head, and what it's like to juggle family responsibilities. So that can be paired with studying a family unit or career unit. Perhaps And then, of course, this resource is well suited for advanced levels to discuss various problems in science and technology. Just some ideas that I compiled based on several STEM-related fields. Professor Pesin and Professor Chertok reflect on the value of fundamental science and research, a topic that is becoming pertinent in our current political climate, right? Why should we research in theoretical physics? He had a wonderful statement, что теоретические исследования сегодня – это микроволновые печи завтра, and gives great historical anecdotes that can be opened up to class discussions. So each of the interviews has those bites of reflection that you can bring to your classroom and build an interesting conversation with. And finally, the resource includes the flyers that are downloadable. Each of them has a version for StarTalk program because they're founders, but also a version without the StarTalk logo. So if you're focusing on environment, you can download this and use the empty fields to add your class number. You can use a QR code to navigate to the website. So you're very welcome to use these blueprints to reach out to us if you have any questions. And then finally, the resource also has a compilation video that you are welcome to use on your department websites. That's called Why Study Russian? Insights from Specialists in Different Professional Fields. And it's a combination of advice from STEM colleagues and colleagues in public service fields. So this is a very quick, thanks to our sponsors, StarTalk and MIT Global Languages Department that provided logistical support, and big thanks to my collaborators, Svetlana and Veronika. I will stop here, and both Veronika and I will be happy to share more insights about this resource. We hope you explore it. We hope you get to use it and to in your classes or in your promotional materials. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Masha. Again, if you have any urgent questions and are afraid to forget them, please type them in the chat, and we will move on to our next presenter, Irina Ivliyeva. She's a Curator's Distinguished Professor and Chair of the Department of Arts, Languages, and Philosophy, leads Missouri Science and Technology Russian program, offering courses at all levels of Russian language, literature, and culture. She joined Missouri Science and Technology in 1997 after teaching for 8 years at the Moscow Power Engineering University in Russia. Irina holds a PhD in linguistics from Vinogradov Russian Language Institute, Russian Academy of Science, and a master's degree in philosophy from Lomonosov Moscow State University. Her research interests include Russian word formation synthesis, comparative semantics, second language acquisition, innovation in teaching methods, and digital humanities. Please, Irina.
That sounded very long and impressive. Thank you very much for introducing me. I was listening to the first two presenters, and I was amazed how we, different people in different locations in the United States, how much intersection we have in our resources, how much intersection we have in our concepts. And I hope that my presentation will contribute and yet highlight one of the specific practical principles that many instructors could utilize in curriculum building, how to structure your sequence of courses and how to make them sustainable. So you can see the front slide over here. Obviously, please let me know if you don't. But if you do, let's move on. Again, the plan of my presentation is outlined here on the front slide. My email listed at the bottom of this slide. We're going to talk about 4 things today. Curriculum sequence, we're going to talk about frameworks, organization of the course, and how to conceptualize structured feedback for students. Okay. There you go. So curriculum sequence. Many of us, and why I decided to present this material is because, first of all, I'm a sole instructor in the entire institution. So I am responsible for top to bottom, front and back, everything that is related to the Russian program. And in the last decade or 15, 20 years, more precisely, we see a shrinkage of resources, programs are closing down, and the number of full-time faculty and part-time faculty are being diminished substantially. So survival really is at the forefront. If you do not address conceptualization, your programs, and how to sequence those courses to make them sustainable, make them appealing to students, and make them at the same time achieve the proficiency level that students themselves feel they're investing into something they can pay back in their careers, your program likely will experience challenges. So we have a minor, we don't have a major. With one person, it's not possible to offer a major, but a minor includes 21 credit hours. And I listed them in the sequence 1, 2, and 80. That is courses that are required for a BA if in other disciplines. So this is a requirement. And then we add additional 3 courses, total 9 credit hours at the 2 and 3,000 and 4,000 level. I also conceptualize my Russian curriculum playing a critical role in certificates and other minors. For example, in Russian and Eurasian studies, intercultural studies certificate, and also multiculturalism and diversity minor. So this is a good structure when you not only focus on the language, but also on the courses that can expand the knowledge for other disciplines and give students additional credentials. So the sequence, this is the real sequence from fall 19, when I offer one, elementary Russian 1 always offered in the beginning of the fall semester. Then we move on to elementary Russian 2. They're both 4 credit hour courses. Then the next semester is Russian 1180. And this is where I want to pause for just a little bit. This course is designed for 2 reasons. One, first of all, it fulfills requirements for anybody who does the number of credit hours required for their Bachelor's of Arts. But also, that course, content of the course, creates a possibility for it to become a prerequisite for scientific Russian, as you can see, arrow 1. And then it's also a prerequisite for many upper-level Russian literature courses, including Russian phonetics and intonation. So this is sort of a conceptual platform that I utilize using only one person, being able to diversify this course enough to create the pipeline for students to continue at different levels. And how do I make decisions which route to take? Simply the enrollment numbers. If I have majority of students interested in more scientific content, we go there. If more literature, we offer that. Or sometimes both. Target audiences for the scientific Russian. Obviously, juniors, seniors, takers of 1180, and transfer students with prior college level experiences in the language. But here is where the trick is. That course is offered concurrently at the graduate level because Missouri S&T accepts a lot of students into the master and PhD programs. And if they studied Russian language elsewhere and still want to at least continue the connection with the content using the target language, I offer them that option. And the course is being taught concurrently, and literally creates for my undergraduate level students additional pool, right, for the quality, quantity, and building connections with people who already may be slightly more advanced than they are. So brief example from elementary Russian 1. And again, very, very primitive one, but very essential. We know that elementary Russian level students use the verb to be all the time. And yes, we can express scientific concepts using the verb to be. But again, verb emit is what you see in the technical literature, pointing out the differences between the usage for specific context, for specific audiences. That's where I create the first sort of a dip for the students to realize language has to be specific, right, for audience and context. Well, obviously, you can express it this way, but again, I think I'm beating around the bush. I'm going to move on. This one. Okay. Frameworks. 5 C's. I'm not going to dwell on that. All educators of the languages are familiar with that. And to an extent, all 5 of them play a critical role in designing the unit structure, the module structure. But what I'm really interested in comparison, connection, and communication building. In particular, one example is communication in connection is I always invite community members who are Russian speakers. I always invite people who from upper level courses for final presentations in scientific Russian. And that creates, and of course, I also invite my lower level students. They don't understand much, but they have this idea that this is where I want to be when I take a couple more classes and graduate to that level. It also brings community together. Recruitment benefits from it. And also, my alumni tend to stay at Missouri S&T and continue with the program if I offer them the opportunity to continue with the advanced level studies. The framework that I would like to talk about a little bit more in depth is probably less known, but it's a very useful one. So AQ, American Council for University Educators, has this wonderful program available to many institutions. And I know that some institutions, for example, University of Missouri System, including my campus, use the grant to train and credential many educators in 2021, 2022 during the pandemic. I'm one of those credentialed ones. In fact, I ran the program myself. And what it focuses on is designing an effective course, establishing environment, using active learning strategies, promoting higher order thinking, assessing and informing instruction, and promoting sense of belonging. So I'm not going to dive into all of these. Instead, what I'm going to do in the chat, I already preloaded this message. I'm sharing with you the links to the website so you can explore. In addition to being able to explore like a paid options, there is a plenty of non-paid options with handouts that you can utilize, with interviews with the professionals that can help you to structure your course better. Moving forward, let's talk about, there's too many screens going on, so I'm just going to try to see if I can, there you go. So course organization. Picture, what is it? The word 1,000 words, right? So let's go with the pictures this time. This is what my Canvas front page looks like. You can see it is in English. In particularly, it's important so people feel kind of comfortable loading in the first page, right? And they can see what how they will be graded, what's the work is organized like. These buttons, I feel, are important to include on the front page because students can easily navigate this way. And you can see that picture that sort of gives them a little bit of insight on what kind of topics will be studied in this course. If you look at the modular structure, we have 16 modules in total, and then modules 1 to 7 is represented for you over here. You can see the entire content is in Russian. So this is where the contrast is. Where the front page is sort of luring them with the familiar, then each page that I design is clearly in Russian. They have to be able to understand, and this is how they get used to the terminology. If you look at what Molly just said, right? Sorry, Marie just said, that quiz on vocabulary recognition, if this is not it, I don't know what is, right? Terminology. Okay, moving quickly forward. Did I miss? Okay, I missed this slide. I clicked too fast. This is the structure of a typical module. Here is where, again, this is module number 2, when you can see partially information is repeated in English and Russian. By the module 5, it all begins being purely Russian. Again, you have to create that exit ramp or merging ramp for the students to be more comfortable, right? You cannot dump them immediately, expect everybody to swim evenly. You can see that what's important in Canvas to me is I include these little things like view, submit, and there's other prompters. So students do not, how to say, wander around. What am I supposed to do with that link, right? They know exactly what to do, when to submit, and so on and so forth. For users of different platforms, and I'm using Canvas as an example, I'm pretty sure that Blackboard also has similar features and you know, Moodle and whatever might your LMS could be. Moving on to the structured feedback. I didn't know how to present this in a different shape, but please bear with me. It's a loaded slide. So here are the days of the week, right? From Sunday through Sunday. What students do is the quizzes on Sunday to prepare them for the week, and it's strategically placed there because most students prepare for the week on Sunday night. Then we've got classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I teach on Tuesday and Thursday schedule. Mandatory weekly voice recording, prompted, scripted, non-scripted, is due on a Friday. And the reason is because I need to have time on Saturday morning to grade it all. And also the students feel free because they submitted something big. They have a free day on Saturday. And then on Sunday, there is a quiz again. So if you can see, by creating this sort of sequence, when students have Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday not loaded with assignments, they can structure themselves better, plan better. So it teaches them skills other than the language, right? Planning, anticipation, and so on. Also, structurally, quizzes are auto-graded, and I usually have 2 iterations, not 1, but 2. 1 feels too punitive, right? They can improve their scores. I sent mandatory email to everybody after each class, summarizing what we did and telling them what is going to be next. So basically, it's my lesson plan. That eliminates the silly emails. Dr. I, did I miss anything important? Can you catch me up? They know they have that email. And also, by way of grading feedback, I introduce varieties of options. Sometimes I leave verbal comments. Sometimes I give typed up Russian messages. Sometimes a combination of slides. Sometimes simply pointing to the link. Again, combination of these resources help the students not to be stuck just one format. And it prompts them as well to respond to me using the Russian language. By the way, my assignments don't close, especially those that are phonetical, right? The Friday voice recordings. I give students deduction of points and they're severely late, but they don't close. So they still have a chance to catch up. Let's talk about 2 important things that I do in all of my classes: goal setting and self-assessment. Those are in English. And here is an example of one that is done in Scientific Russian 370 level by my student Jack, who I believe was in engineering management. What I like and highlighted for you here is particularly reference to Russian 1180. He contributes, right, signing up for Scientific 370 because he liked so much the content in 1180. And also, he expects not only use his passive and active written skills. I teach to all my classes the traditional table with 4 skills. That's why my students understand why utilizing all 4 of them is like a 4 wheels in the car. You cannot drive on only 3. And again, understanding of scientific text. So again, this is your 370 level. Let's take a look at the 570 response from a student. His name was, I believe, Cody. And he was the one who was a graduate student who came from other institution, study chemical engineering. But he signed up for this class. And look at this. I highlighted a couple of things, but it's available in depth, right? Again, focusing on vocabulary, reviewing the goals and feeling that they've accomplished what they said to accomplish. Referring to the speaking skills, losing the fear of speaking, even if they feel they still make mistakes. All, again, referencing resources such as YouTube videos, news online. This is exactly what we want to form in our students, that curiosity of mind, because the real education, frankly, begins after the class is over. How and where they can use those skills and resources in real life. I'm going to conclude very quickly. How am I on time? Do you have a couple more minutes? Okay. Instructor's observations. I hate, conclusion slide. I always try to provide some of them, how to say, things that I lived through and internalized. I feel that designing my course in this way reduces ambiguity, because my students always interested, Dr. I, how can I get it right? They want to have that one right answer. They're engineers. This is how they're being evaluated, right? You have a formula, you got a response. So this language of the science allows them to remove that ambiguity and at least approximate getting it right. Effective vocabulary recognition, retention, and exploration of new vocabulary strategies by having that available for them from the get-go, right? Putting it in different context, reviewing it through multiple options. I feel that also helps the students to retain information and form new skills. I don't know if you teach engineers or not, but I myself, a structural linguist, that's how I think. And that's why my students respond really well to organization of the lessons that has minimal number of pictures, but have a lot of slides that with diagrams, charts, and that sort of thing. So students in engineering mindsets respond really well to that kind of organization. In particular, they're formula thinkers, right? They want to put everything, think about language sentence as a variables that you can change to get to a different, slightly different result, but again, utilize the same formula. It works really well in word formation and syntax structure when you teach them. And I believe that repetitive nature of the scientific language, if you ever read scientific textbook, essentially, you can describe the say all chemical elements in the entire table using the same blueprint. That's what I'm talking about. Repetitive structure allows them to practice and also scaffold in a combined fashion. I think this is a winning combination. Lastly, I would like to highlight one resource that I already shared with everybody in the chat. I created the link that's called Instructor's Toolkit, communication prompts, feedback templates, assessment rubrics, and so on and so forth that are available if you use this little tiny URL. And again, it's open for everyone. And I think the only thing that I ask for everyone is not to delete anything. And I think I put the block on that. But you can access with this link anybody in the world. And essentially, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much for listening to me. And I really, really appreciate the opportunity to share with my colleagues and contribute in meaningful ways.
Thank you so much, Irina. Thank you for wonderful presentation. Okay, we're going to move on to my presentation.
I think I'm introducing Veronika. So just very quick note to say that it's my pleasure to introduce Veronika, Dr. Veronika Egorova, who's a senior preceptor in Russian at the Harvard University Slavic Department. Veronika's, sorry, let me pull up so I don't misquote. Sorry, just 1 second. All right. So she teaches all levels of Russian language and culture, including Russian for academic and professional purposes. Her interests include teaching Russian through STEM, heritage language pedagogy, content-based and project-based learning. She's a co-author of Vverh, Building on Your Foundations of Russian, second-year Russian textbook, just out with Routledge, and a co-author of the open access resource that I shared today, Choose to Study Russian for Professional Needs. So welcome, Veronika.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to everybody who came to listen to our presentations and to my wonderful colleagues for such inspiring presentations and sharing resources and ideas and pedagogical approaches of how to teach STEM in different levels of Russian. And today I'm going to be talking about a particular course that Maria and I have been working and developing over the past several years. At my university, I call it Russian for STEM, Engaging with Global Issues. And so I'll talk about some of the guiding principles for creation of this course and the essential questions that guide each module that we have developed. So here's the course structure. Again, my course is developed for fourth year Russian, and Maria can talk after the presentation. Maybe she teaches this combined with third and fourth year level students. We meet 3 hours a week, and we have 5 thematic modules on contemporary issues in science and technology. They span between 2 and 4 weeks, depending on which students are present in the class, enrolled in the course. Sometimes we do this semester we did all 5 modules. In the past, we selected just 4 and kind of stayed longer on certain topics that students were interested in. So the first module is introductory module, and we talk about how to present your academic and professional interest. We spend a lot of time on describing graphs and numbers, all the graphical information that you need, declensions of numerals, and then move on to the content-based modules on nuclear technology, public health, and vaccination in particular, artificial intelligence, and climate change in the Arctic. There is a midterm project for which students are prepare independently and present as a midterm. They have to find a Russian-speaking professional at any institution in the United States or in Russia in the field of their interest and their majors, prepare questions and interview the specialist and then share it with the class. And so this gives them an opportunity to use what we learn in this course and apply in a real-world task. And also there is a final that also students prepare for throughout the semester. They choose a topic of their professional interest. They have to read 3 scientific articles in Russian. They have to write short annotations. They have to make their own vocabulary list, and then present at the end of the semester. And topics of their professional interest often are the ones that we cover in class. Just a second. So here are the course goals. We provide students with a multidimensional approach to their academic and professional interest by engaging with key STEM fields. We facilitate interactions with Russian-speaking professionals in various scientific fields to enhance real-world language application. We expand their technical vocabulary and professional communication skills in Russian. We explore cutting-edge scientific advancements while critically analyzing their impact on society and global challenges. We develop their ability to effectively communicate scientific concepts, both orally and in writing, and finally strengthen their ability to present research findings and scientific discussion in Russian, culminating in the final presentation. So the content for the entire course comes from various sources, and one of the very rich resource that I wanted to talk about is the Russian project, an educational platform that's called Postnauka. It's a wonderful resource about modern fundamental science and the scientists who created, and as well as popularization of scientific knowledge in the world. And the core idea of the project is that the authors of this are the scientists themselves. So they talk about their research in the first person. And as you can see on this slide, we take different kind of genres from this website. We take short videos. There's a lot of games that students really enjoy, a lot of infographics. There's video lectures. There's different kind of texts. And also we use a lot of content from international agencies that have a lot of resources in Russian, such as the ones that you see here. And specifically, United Nations Climate Change has a whole YouTube channel in Russian, об изменениях климата по-русски. So it's a wonderful, wonderful resource that I recommend to everyone. In terms of vocabulary, we use the 2 tools, Textometer to identify lexical items and grammar construction typical for the advanced level, and a tool that's called Visualizing Russian that's been developed by Stephen Clancy at Harvard University that also helps to parse vocabulary and see the color coding corresponds to the levels of Russian. Green is the basic first-year Russian vocabulary, blue is second-year Russian, and so on. So it's also a very helpful resource, and the resource is based on the frequency dictionaries with some minor changes. And so by using these tools, we identified общенаучная лексика, or what Irina has referred to as repetitive nature in scientific language. In particular, a lot of verbs that can be used in any kind of module to talk about scientific inventions. So verbs like взаимодействует, воздействует, происходит, получается. A lot of verbs to describe different or classify different phenomena, что является чем, что состоит из чего, что принадлежит чему, and so on. And also domain-specific vocabulary. So if we talk about physics, for example, we talk about радиация, излучение, протоны, нейтроны, распадаться, радиоактивность, and things like that. So returning to the topics that we cover in the modules, as you can see from the slides, we have very carefully selected the subjects because they're highly relevant in the society and frequently appearing in public discourse and on the news. Again, all those articles that you see appeared within the past year. And by engaging students in conversations around these global issues, we aim to deepen and broaden their understanding of critical ideas and processes and empower them to apply what they learn both in academic settings, but also in real world context. And teaching these topics is also a lot of fun because every year there is news on the topic that we teach, and you can take it and readily go and teach in class, and students will already be familiar with all the vocabulary that they need to understand this topic. So, for instance, in the physical module, students examine nuclear technologies within the broader context of alternative energy solutions, and we also talk about AI. And as you can see, there is a story in Medusa that Google Amazon подключает свои дата-центры к ядерным реакторам. So that's perfectly combines the two topics and brings them together. Or in the public health module, we talk about vaccination and talk about current vaccination trends. And again, as you saw on the previous slide, it's a very, very current topic. There is a rise of measles in the US, for example. And so students design information brochures or create engaging reels to promote vaccination awareness among their peers. Each module that we have designed is guided by the notion of essential question, as described by McTighe and Wiggins. And so essential question is a usually open-ended question that's typically doesn't have a single final or correct answer, is thought-provoking and intellectually engaging, and often sparks very heated discussion and debate in class. It calls for high-order thinking, such as analysis, inferences, evaluations, and predictions, points toward important transferable ideas, sometimes even across disciplines, as I already demonstrated, and requires support and justification, not just a single answer. And it also recurs over time. That is, the question can and should be revisited again and again. And again, as we see in the news, those issues are of current public interest and they constantly surface on the news. So the examples of essential questions that we use in these three modules, and I'll deep dive slightly on the module on the Arctic, are as follows. So in Module 2 on nuclear technology, students explore what are the advantages and disadvantages of nuclear technologies. In Module 3 on vaccines, we talk about where is the balance between personal freedom and public health. In Module on AI, students explore how does AI change our lives? And of course, this is a very current and heated topic. And so we use these essential questions to effectively frame our key learning goals. And this is what it looks like. So we'll take a closer look at one of our modules on the Arctic, which is called Арктическая культура и эталон экологического мышления. And the essential question is, what makes the Arctic unique and why should the world be concerned about what's happening there right now? This question leads to a set of kind of sub-questions that support students' learning, as you can see on this slide. And also, it helps us frame module goals, key learning goals for content, language, and critical thinking, which are as follows. So for content goals, students develop the understanding of the Arctic's unique physical, ecological, cultural characteristics, analyze current environmental issues, explore the global implications of climate change in the Arctic. For language goals, they expand academic and thematic vocabulary related to geography, ecosystems, climate science, develop skills in writing, cause-effect arguments, and opinion pieces on issues related to this topic, and strengthen their oral communication by participating in discussions. And for critical thinking, they reflect on the interconnectedness between human activities worldwide and the Arctic environment. They evaluate and illustrate examples of sustainable and responsible nature resources used by indigenous indigenous people, and analyze how the interpretation of traditional ecological knowledge and Western science strengthens our understandings of climate change. And again, our modular goals, this is how they translate into the module structure about the Arctic. So again, the essential question is what makes the Arctic unique and why should the world be concerned about what is happening there now? And so we start the module with talking about изменение климата. We talk about изменение климата as being one of the planetary boundaries, what other planetary boundaries are there, how it affects the Arctic, how it affects the geopolitics in the region, how it affects indigenous people, and how the traditional knowledge of indigenous people can contribute to the Western studying of the Arctic. And the module, the final assessment for the module is students write a DOP essay on one of the two topics. And here are just some brief examples of the tasks that students are doing in the course. So as a pre-task, when we introduce the topic and the task and activate students' background knowledge, we watch videos from Postnauka on global warming. They take a test on what they know about global warming. We look at the graphs and they talk about what is carbon footprint. They also talk about, try to explain in their own words, what is greenhouse effect, and then start putting together the connections of what's happening in the world, what is climate change, how it affects nature, and then how those natural changes affect in terms the social, economical, what kind of social, economical consequences they have on people. The actual task is a wonderful game or workshop that Maria and I have discovered over the past 2 years. So if you do not know, and I'll ask Maria if you could put a link to Climate Fresk. Climate Fresk was founded in 2018 in France, and since then it became kind of this global movement that helps thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to better understand the mechanism behind the climate change and spark meaningful climate action. And so what it is a collaborative science-based workshop where participants explore the causes and consequences of climate change in an interactive and team-based format. So as you can see on the image, what students do is participants piece together the puzzle that's made of this type of cards that you see on the screen. And we were very lucky enough, this workshop has a set of games for adults, which includes, I think, 42 cards. And then it also has a version for kids. And this version, Maria and I have been using. So the card on the right you see is the kind of a shorter version that's been intended for children. And this is what we used with our students. So what participants do is they work together to make a fresk, climate fresk, and then identify what kind of logical connections they have between humans and the consequences that they have on nature. And so it really, those cards are based on data from Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change. And it also really helps students to understand the basics of climate science and feel empowered. Again, this is a very wonderful resource that's accessible online, and they have workshops, and you can train to become a facilitator. And Maria and I took these workshops ourselves twice. Every workshop is about 3 hours long, but it's an eye-opening in terms of how you understand the global warming and what it causes on the Earth. So this is the actual task. And the task is the whole thing was facilitated by the professional facilitator that you see in the bright neon shirt that happened to speak Russian. For post-task, we reflected on the process of the game. We identified, corrected some language errors, also consolidated vocabulary that came up in the game. And there was a few very specific concepts about the different types of the ice, for example, that students weren't aware of. But we also talked about climate change and emotions. And this is a huge topic in the climate change now. As you see here, this is the blob tree that was created in early 1980s to talk about feelings and emotions. And these illustrations are intended to be used as prompts for students to identify and express their own emotions when they talk about climate change, about their feelings as a way to start conversation about these things. So this is also very successful activity for students. And finally, another task is when we actually move from climate change to the region of the Arctic. Again, we use different types of input sources. Students looked at the infographics. They read the Arctic Council document about what's happening in the Arctic. They read articles about problems in the Arctic. They watched videos. And as a basic task, they had to map the impact of the climate change in the Arctic and on the geopolitics. So each student had to work on a concrete topic, research this one of the 5 concrete topics, and then they came together as a group. And as researchers and policy advisors, each student was responsible for one of the problem to share strategic information about this complex issue and identify if this is an area or zone of potential conflict between nations or cooperation. And students would map out together this map and write a brief to an international environmental NGO that reflects all of these problems. So this is just a very brief kind of view of the course and some of the sample tasks and sample modules. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have further. And again, my course is intended for students of the 4th year, but Maria has been very successfully teaching this course for the 3rd year level or with combined 3rd and 4th year level with more scaffolding, so she can probably address that topic. Thank you. And let's open the floor. We have enough time to talk. Let's open the floor to questions. Again, I would like to thank all my wonderful colleagues for such an inspirational presentations. Maria talked about resource, Molly for wonderful ideas of how you can teach STEM topics and sustainability in beginning and intermediate levels. And Irina gave a wonderful overview with a lot of pedagogical insights of how to organize the whole curriculum in STEM. Please, if you have any questions, let's discuss, let's talk. Пожалуйста.
Здравствуйте. Можно на русском? Я преподаю на 1-м курсе, и хотелось бы организовать свои занятия таким образом, что студенты не просто там сидели на каких-то форумах, да, заучивали эти форумы и падежи, но делали что-то такое meaningful, как вы сами говорили. И I really wanted to integrate these, topics like the social topics into my classroom, so they could, care about not only themselves but also the environment. So my question, I think, is about how to integrate this lessons at the 1st level Russian class, where there is no STEM students, but there are some heritage students that can handle this, more complex, I would say, structures or language use. But overall, I teach international relations students and from the political science, and some of them are from math, but yeah, I have a very mixed class of different levels. So, but I teach A1 Russian. Yeah, so this is my first question, and I have one more.
Colleagues, would anyone like to address that?
I can start. So the first time I taught a STEM course, it was a 4th year course. There were 6 students. It was wonderful, upper level. But I've realized that, very few programs have the opportunity to offer advanced level customized courses, right? Our colleagues at Harvard and MIT, of course,
Yeah.
it's wonderful. But for people working at institutions like mine, if we're going to integrate STEM topics in the curriculum, we have to find these ways to bring it to the lower levels. And I think something else that you're talking about creating meaningful experiences will have a lot to do with the place where you teach. So one person who's doing some really excellent work on elementary level climate lessons in Russian is Molly Messick. She's at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, Anchorage. Anyway, University of Alaska. Molly Messick. She's fantastic. So she's taken a little module that I created that was asking students to listen to. So this was on the Arctic, and they listen to the beginning of a podcast that talks about the regions of the Arctic, and they're just all they do is listen to a list, right, of the different, right, oblastya, respublika, right, that the regions of the Arctic, and they have to, do a little mapping project. She's taken that and created some more materials to go a little bit further. Now she teaches in Alaska, and she's connecting her lessons to climate issues in Alaska, to Russian-Alaska relations, right? Things that are very specific to her geographical location. So when I think about how in Kentucky, where we don't have a sizable Russian population, what are the connections here? For us, it's going to be, developing things around the negative effects of climate change. Like we have massive flooding in Eastern Kentucky. And my students, right, they know people who have lost their homes because of flooding. So thinking about, climate change and their own experience, or, we think about Eastern Kentucky was it's coal mining territory, right? So how do we connect coal mining industry in Eastern Kentucky with things happening in parts of Russia or parts of Eastern Ukraine, right? Similar landscapes. And it does take a lot of, creativity to think, how do we do this, right? Make it engaging to your students, things that are meaningful to them, maybe based on where they come from, what their interests are, what your geography is. And then, just like, I'm sure other folks have some ideas for how to get it to that elementary level, novice level.
I want to continue slightly in the same direction, but slightly different. Sometimes as instructors, we have to ourselves reimagine traditional things that we teach and sell it to students as science. This is what I do at elementary level. The best way to get them into it is to start reading cooking recipes. It has all ingredients you need, including verbs of imperfective and perfective. You have the measurements, you've got the process. Essentially, this is your elementary blueprint. So, and here is where you can sell it as a scientific product, but then you can branch out into culture. You can branch out into grammar. You can actually have a tactile experience if you have a club on campus. You can cook the recipes, share the recipes, invite the community. So again, this is your reimagining yourself, something that you do and present it in new light. The menus at the restaurant, it's also to an extent a scientific project, right? Because you have different portions of the menu. How are they all connected? And again, prices, right? That's when you need your numbers and using genitive singular, genitive plural with 1, 2, whatever. It may sound like a beat up pathway, but my students buy it all the time. You just need to kind of put a spin on it a little bit.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure, and like if I may add, I think most classes, maybe even second semester, first year, you start talking about biography, not only your own, but also talking a little bit about sharing information about a famous person. We've had good luck with inspiring students to find famous people or people who made an impact in the sphere of interest. So for some, it would be scientists. For some, it would be engineers, inventors. For some, it would be writers or scholars. But it's a little bit a step beyond, but it's also a bit more of an investigation. So one student was thrilled to find out that Isaac Asimov had roots from Eastern Europe. Another one found out that Ludwig Zamenhof, who invented the Esperanto language, was also from the Russian Empire, right? So as Irina and Molly just said, looking where you are, looking at their interest and being a little bit creative, like not being afraid to go into slightly more complex topics. It's their interests that will drive them. So I think that would be one advice. And then it really depends on what your main curriculum is, right? What curricular units you have to cover and grammar and vocabulary, right? So I think those would be like a couple suggestions I have. Thank you. Oh, and lastly, another thing that works well, again, depending on the school, but just having them snoop around different department websites and try to find scholars whose education or PhD was from Russian universities. And this is very basic. Учился, окончил, изучает. So kind of working with the accusatives, working with prepositional, and they become aware of the big Russian-speaking diaspora where you are. And ideally, maybe I've also, during COVID, it was much easier. I didn't do it at first year level, but second year level, even in the first semester of second year level, I invited a math professor. Most of students had to have his class. They were thrilled to see him in class. And we asked him, где вы родились? Откуда ваша семья? Почему вы изучаете математику? At some point, he started talking faster. He got so excited. The feedback I got was, I didn't understand half of it, but it was amazing, right? To see him animated, to see him excited. And then we unpacked and translated for them that he said, в Советском Союзе было много истины, в математике одна истина. Math only had one truth in the Soviet Union. So it's if you're finding someone willing to connect and step out of their comfort zone, that creates amazing synergies, even at the levels you're teaching. Thank you.
I do the same. I just have to add this. I do the same. We've got pretty good representation of scientists from former Soviet Union at my institution in the Department of Physics and Department of Chemistry, Biology, and inviting them to this class not only sort of showcase that we still promote Russian, but also it creates that connection between the departments, right? Opportunities to develop new curriculum, devise new programs, and promote that sustainability, right? Because students want to see the general context. They don't want to be just, I'm going to take this class and I'm done. They want to see how it all fits in. And that is helpful. Plus, you don't have to do much except for creating a list and then moderating the discussion. So it's really sort of creates a little bit of time for you to reflect and conceptualize and get new ideas of how you want to, contextualize those things.
I have a question. I'm a big lover of STEM courses. We have Russian for the professions for many, many years. Due to the low enrollment, it has to be mixed with advanced Russian. That created, other problems. The way to get around, you know what I do? I do one day, which I call a grammar day, because advanced classes normally have all kind of student, mixture of everybody. So I separate them. Right now, they're separated in 3 groups. And with advanced groups who are really strong, I do STEM things. So actually, the same thing works also with the second sometimes, and even with the first one, how to enlarge the first one, not so much. First one, a different thing, right? My question is, I love your post-nauka. I used it a lot. Is there a way to get your presentations there? Because you mentioned these websites and other things which I have no clue about, especially the last project, especially Veronika. What you were writing was very interesting. One of the questions is there was a slide from you that you like grammar. How did you call it? So how is grammar represented? How is grammar represented, right? In
students make connection between the climate change and the effects of climate change and how it influences.
There's a slide about the grammar. And so something about how much words are taken from regular language, what is specifically research scientific language, and something else, right?
Oh, it's a vocabulary, right?
Vocabulary, yeah. Vocabulary, yeah. Mhm. My question about that, you probably is aware of the Soviet textbooks where they were teaching научный стиль речи. I feel the difference in, научный стиль речи of the Soviet time and how, it's developing now. Do you see the difference and how this chart reflects in your idea this difference? Because, I was trying at a certain point to teach, in the Soviet style through these textbooks. And of course, I realized, how they talk.
Maria and I also looked at a lot of textbooks, and there is, Zlatoust has a lot of serious Russian for blank science, right? And the big difference between those textbooks and our resource is that a lot of times the Russian textbooks are intended for students of the specific majors who would be plugged in. So they take a year of Russian in the Padfak, and then they're plugged in like Department of Chemistry, and they listen to lectures in the Department of Chemistry. But for us, this is not the case, right? And so we're doing content-based course. And so we can just teach our students the structures, isolated structures, something is something. So we have to give them those structures in the communicative context. And so that's what we're trying to do. So in each module, we try to identify bits and pieces. Like when we talk about изменение климата, there is a lot of verbal nouns, right? So we kind of review verbal nouns. When students have to read and prepare for their final presentation, they have to write annotation. So we do have 2 classes that are devoted solely to научный стиль речи, and we review participles, all of these things that you have to do. Because when they read scientific articles, this is what they see. There's a lot of reflexive verbs, there's a lot of inversions, цепочки родительного падежа, complex syntax, verbal adverbs, participles, all of these things. So we also do this, but it's just not in exactly the same way how the Russian textbooks do it. Because our focus is communicative and content.
And do you somehow try to organize them? From what I noticed, trying to compare the old style and what is the reality, the only sanctions with увеличение, уменьшение, сокращение, that works. Short form participles, that works. Most all the other items are kind of, you have to squeeze it in, and you have to basically develop your own structure of syntax of science research style. Do you have the same feeling? Do you try to organize this?
I do. I absolutely do. Because what you describe right now, this is my first year of my pedagogical teaching back to the МЭИ, Moscow, Moskovsky Energetический Institute. That's exactly what we did. So again, coming here, you sort of kind of can transfer partially your experiences, but unfortunately, you cannot implement it to the extent that we did on Padfak or the first full year and then place them to the department of their choosing, right? It's still a struggle because, our clients here, they cannot sustain the level of rigor and the requests for grammar acquisition and vocabulary absorption that we demanded from our students way back when, right, in the previous century. Unfortunately, this is the reality. But what I like in particular is in sciences, processing thick texts with no pictures is a skill of its own. So what I use those texts for is to conversion of the text, multi-page text, scanning it and presenting it in bullet points. And then finally, kind of a reduction, reading capabilities. That works really well for my students. And that's what they want. I have a scientific article, multi-page. How am I going to go? Where to find the keywords? How to extract the basic information that is useful, and how to kind of filter out the fluff, so to speak, right? So that's, it's not an answer, but it's my experience. Irina, I thank you very much. I knew exactly what you're talking about. And it's a transition, I think, for instructor, right? Because they don't know what we experienced. And we cannot come to them and dump this experience on them completely unexpectedly.
Yeah.
So also try to group them semantically according to language functions, right? How do you narrate? There's a function of description. There is a function. So look at the list of functions that are used for in scientific text and kind of group the syntax, the vocabulary, semantics, and grammar around those functions, because this is what moves it.
Does it help? Because I tried, it didn't help me very much. It cannot squeeze into this function all the variety of all these things. I couldn't. Yeah. And I claim that this is in my syllabus, that this is how things will be organized. But in reality, that doesn't work for me at least. Yeah, I don't know.
If I may
That's a
have
great
question for
Yeah.
Molly. Molly, what were some activities that went best for you and your students when you teach sustainability and when you get to the kind of more final activities or summative activities or perhaps projects that went particularly well for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really like the 15-minute city concept as a verb of motion, and like как добраться, right? Because it's giving them practice, right? Like we can go out and we can do, like, we just, we walk outside and they have this little activity, how do you get to the student center? How do you get to the library? Okay, you do that. But in the sustainability, right, the 15-minute city concept, we're looking at, right, you know, I present them with the idea, right? You get there, and they have to think about and write about, and I think it opens their eyes to the fact that you can't just walk anywhere in America, in suburban America. You can't, there's maybe on campus it's a little different, but I think it really heightens their awareness to that huge problem of poor infrastructure for public transportation, and in my city, poor infrastructure for bicycles and other, forms of transportation. So that one works well. I also, part of the final test, they had a written test that they did, but then my favorite part was the oral component of that test on sustainability, where I pretended to be someone seeking advice for how to improve my, so it's a small class, so we did this one-on-one, and I was like, oh, I want to be better about sustainability. I want to, take care of the planet. What do you advise me to do? And they would give me advice. And first they had to ask me questions. Do you own, do you have a bicycle? Do you ride a bicycle? How do you get to work? Right? Like, how do you get to work? Oh, do you own a bicycle? Oh, and we just role play this thing. Yeah, so they've already studied transportation. They've studied sort of zero waste movement and eco-friendly, substitutions that you can make in your life, and right, thinking about recycling. And so they can ask these questions, right? Well, do you do this? And they get to be the expert, right? And they give me advice. So that was one part I thought was especially successful. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops, particularly when we get these materials kind of in a format that's not just a handout, it's not just a PDF, but like a better format for that kind of interactive material.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah. Sure.
And I just wanted to add that the course that I talked about and that Maria and I are teaching is also, we're working on open access educational resource. So everything is going to be available. We're kind of in the piloting mode and looking for grant and the platform to publish it, but it's work in progress, and so we'll be happy to share it with everyone.
Yeah, I just want to take this moment to say to Maria and Veronika, like the way that you have created these materials and made them accessible and just opened everything so generously to everyone. It's just an unbelievable gift, and I've heard your presentation many times, and it just astounds me that we can all use this and that you're building more things to give us. It's fantastic. So thank you so much.
We really hope that it can be useful.
I think they will be.
Like in my grammar days, even advanced Russian. That would be great. Great.
Yeah. Thank you so much, colleagues. We are at time, and Evgeny just gently let us know that our session is should be ending. Would be happy to continue this conversation, and I'm sure I'll see many of you at future conferences. Thank you so much for sharing your wonderful presentations, and see you next. Looking forward to continue the conversation on teaching Russian through STEM.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Спасибо
everyone.
большое.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Огромное спасибо всем.
Спасибо, Ирина.
Спасибо, да,
Молли.
Вероника, спасибо за организацию, да, и
Спасибо
Ирине и
большое.
Молли большое спасибо.
Прекрасно, все прекрасно.
Спасибо.
Желаем успехов, дорогие коллеги.
Спасибо.
И вам тоже.
Следующий.
С наступающим окончанием семестра.
Спасибо.
До свидания.
Отлично, отлично.